Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the Secret Cave podcast. Today, Benjamin's going to be in charge of an interview. This week, it's with Nathan Bernard, who's one of the most interesting people sailing the internet right now. He's very active on Twitter, so make sure to go off and follow him. And on that Twitter, he describes himself as making mobile apps, bots, and podcasts. That sounds quite simple, but if you start looking into all of those individual elements, you see how interesting and innovative his stuff really is. He noticed the use of Twitter bots in the alt-right to assist in Donald Trump's popularity, which led him to create his own bots to combat them. That's fascinating in its own right, but he's since gone on to come out with his fake news podcast, where he exposes various personalities for their wish to warp the truth. Nathan's someone who not only understands the landscape ahead of him, but can create new ways to move within it. Thanks to him for agreeing to appear, and well done, Benjamin, for being far better informed about the subject than I would be. Apparently, Benjamin had some recording issues, meaning we'll be jumping right in kind of mid-conversation, but you'll get into the flow of it. Also, yes, I do have a cold. It's horrid.
Usually I have a mic, but, I'm in the office right now, so I don't have my mic with me.
Oh, whereabouts is your office?
So we're in Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn, and then I run a dev shop, which I was mentioning. That's why I had to reschedule the call. So we have our office in Dumbo in Brooklyn, if you know where that is. It's right down on the water, on the river, like under the bridge,
Okay, yeah.
essentially. And I'm not sure, do you guys have WeWorks over in the UK or Latvia?
I don't think so. Is that the office space kind of place?
It's a co-working space, so we have 4 people that are full-time in the dev shop, and then a bunch of contractors, some for sales, some for design and engineering, that kind of come and go. So it's just it's an affordable way to actually have some cool office space, and it's a bunch of startups and early stage companies, freelancers, and here in Brooklyn it's mostly creatives that are in our office space. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So what is your dev shop called, and where can I find out about it?
Oh yeah, I should have sent you a link to it. So it's called CoStudio. It's costudio.io if you went on there. Mm-hmm. All the marketing and branding on the website is focused on bots and building chatbots for companies, since kind of riding the wave from the political stuff from the election that I had done.
Yeah.
We started charging companies to build them mostly Facebook Messenger bots, but we do a lot of stuff with machine learning and just artificial intelligence in general. But I mean, we can build pretty much anything, but that's what we try to brand ourselves on and focus on.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that you'd kind of branched out from these kind of hobby Twitter bots to really complex commercial ones.
Yeah, that wasn't the plan, to be fully honest. I had just built those Twitter bots and everything for fun, which I'm sure we can talk some about.
Yeah, definitely.
That just surprisingly, in some ways, we started getting inbounds for bigger companies, some as large as companies like FanDuel, that were like, hey, can you build us bots? And we started building them from anything from Slack bots, mostly, like I said, Messenger bots, and some Twitter bots. But yeah, we just started to realize that people would pay us to do this. And started building that along with mobile apps and, the stuff that I'm more familiar with.
And that very first point of contact with success with a Twitter bot was with the who is Neil thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess you saw the article and everything?
Yeah, I did read the article. I went to go listen to the podcast, but the first episode was missing, so I listened to about half or so of the episodes from there on.
Oh my God, I need to renew the subscription with SoundCloud for that.
Oh, they cut your space?
Yeah, because I stopped paying for the premium stuff, and so you only get a certain number of minutes on it. So I think they started cutting tracks. At least I got an email about it, but I didn't realize they took off the first one. But yeah, that's how it started. I saw a guy, that his name on Twitter was Neil Turner, but essentially just an anonymous alt-right account. And day in, day out, he was getting the first reply to Donald Trump. And so being in tech and everything, it was pretty obvious that he was just being a human sitting there every single day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Putting up multimedia content within seconds, milliseconds really, of every single Donald Trump tweet coming out. So yeah, I mean, just started trolling him mostly. I made a bot that first just replied to him initially, and would put stuff up like, Neil, this content doesn't seem very relevant to what Trump is saying, and then got a little bit obsessed with it and just kind of like, who the hell is this guy? Why is he doing this in the first place? And made the initial podcast, not trying to dox him or anything, just basically saying, hey, here's what this guy is doing, here's kind of the tech that I think he's using, and hopefully I was hoping that people would help me try to find out who he was. And yeah, after I made the bot that trolled him, I made the podcast, some people started listening to it, guys like Vic Berger were into it, so I started then doing the same thing he was doing and replying directly to Trump. And after like 4 months of doing that, getting the first reply to Donald Trump with the bots, I had gotten, it was like 250 million views on the content that we had put out there. So it was just like, wow, this is one, absurd from, just a tech and kind of stats and data point of view of like, this is enormous reach. And on the other side, Neil started actually direct messaging me. And, we had some honest conversations. It turned from being confrontational just to kind of like, why are you doing this? Who are you? And I figured if I learned a lot about him, I could learn a lot about the alt-right and just kind of why these people are voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Like, as much as like, why are they all of these kind of fringe political characters now coming to like the forefront of like the news and like the public discourse and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's unreal, at least here in the United States, that, for instance, someone like Mike Cernovich, just an insane conspiracy theorist idiot, now has a press pass to the White House.
Yeah.
Bannon, like Mike Cernovich is literally in the press corps, the White House press corps at this point.
It's insane.
Isn't that fucking insane?
Just the shit he's come out with in the past. Like, how is he allowed to be seen as a credible figure in any way?
I don't know. I mean, he's willing to say anything to, take over a news cycle and create a distraction. So, people hate watch his stuff and he can distract you from pretty much anything. And if they give him a voice, like when, he was on 60 Minutes or any of the Susan Rice stuff, it's just it's a distraction. It's the same thing that Trump or any of these guys do. And people like Steve Bannon are in there, and obviously he's a propagandist and understands how to manipulate and own media cycles, news cycles. So, it's pretty unreal. But at this point, like I guess it started as seeming unreal, and it was amazing that this was even reality. But yeah, at this point, it's just, oh yeah, here's another fucking absurd thing that Donald Trump is putting into the news. We're talking about launching, in 60 missiles as he's eating a fucking piece of cake. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's just like, all right, man. Like, so I don't know. These things just kind of become commonplace. But yeah, it started out as very surreal and has become reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard like from your fake news podcast, it felt like you were trying to like use surreal techniques, like putting his gorilla breathing exercises over like this weird ambient music, Mike Cernovich's. It just seemed like you were really trying to like emphasize how surreal this really all is.
Oh yeah, I mean, and taking a cue from guys like Vic Berger or Todd Dracula, if you know him on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like Tim and Eric, obviously. And, side note is, coincidentally, I'm from the same hometown, actually, as Vic and Tim.
Oh, right.
Yeah, weird coincidence. I actually met up with Vic in my hometown at one point, him and Todd. So, like, I think there's something to just being from that kind of area of, Pennsylvania that promotes this just kind of, I don't know, like dystopian. It's just a surreal kind of weird lens of looking at the world. And, it all is surreal. Mike Cernovich, a guy that lives off alimony from his wife's, money she made from her Facebook IPO, is now a credible person and writing something like The Gorilla Mindset. I don't know. Like, this guy has no credibility, but because there is no such thing as truth anymore in this world, you can say pretty much anything you want. And if people listen to you, then that's the truth.
Yeah, it becomes a version of the truth, yeah.
Exactly. So totally, definitely any of those fake news things, I mean, doing it and making it fully surreal and just looking at the absurdity of these people as people. I'm not super political or anything, but I'm interested in all these people that are just absurd and crazy to me. So yeah, that's kind of why I made that stuff.
Yeah, I got that absurdism was really funny. Like, I thought the Sean Spicer episode was hilarious. Like, I didn't know anything about him, essentially. Like, I've seen like a couple of short clips, like, being outside of the like ecosystem of American politics, like I kind of have to get myself into it. So I hadn't really seen much of him, but I had no idea that he had all of this like weird kind of teen angst kind of stuff. I don't really know how to describe it.
Something weird about Sean Spicer is that a lot of my really good friends, one of my best friends actually, is from Connecticut College. Like, he went to Connecticut College for school, and that's where Sean Spicer went as well. So I've been to the campus. I can really relate to kind of his college experience because I'd just been there a bunch.
Yeah.
And, I had found from the Connecticut College Voice, which I think that's what their newspaper is called, that old interview with his roommate when he was a freshman in school. And I don't know, it was just really telling of who he was. He ran for class president 4 times every single year, failed every single year horribly, got obliterated. And, just that kind of just schmuck attitude that he has of just, always having a smirk on his face and being happy that people hate him. And that being part of his persona, like knowing that people dislike him and just kind of owning that and going into situations and hoping that he can make them dislike him more. Like you said, that just kind of weird angst. Yeah, I mean, that just seems like it's been him and his persona throughout life. So yeah, that was cool just to, like I said, like I like to see them as people. Like the people to me are interesting, not necessarily their politics. So yeah, it was cool.
Did you get interested in American politics because of the people behind it, and like not as to the actual effect it has on America?
Yeah, well, I guess like, and this is kind of consistent with just the people that I've looked at, from Cernovich to the Who Is Neil stuff to, I guess, Donald Trump in some way, shape, or form. But I started looking at politics. God, when was that? That was like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, like really following it, because do you know Ted Cruz?
Of him, but not really.
Yeah, so he's a part of, he was a big like Tea Party sort of guy. He ran for president this year or last year now. He's a senator from Texas and extremely conservative dude. And he, in I think it was 2013, filibustered Obamacare and was standing up and did that for almost 24 hours straight, to the point where, one, this guy's a total asshole, and he just started reading Green Eggs and Ham. He started quoting Duck Dynasty and, reading out transcripts from their show. You know what I mean? Like just making a total and complete fool of himself. And watching that, it was like, wow, this is a guy that went to Harvard Law School somehow, is a U.S. senator, and this is our process. A guy like this can create a government shutdown, which he did.
Like, it made you like realize how much of a circus it all is, and how like it's a form of entertainment rather than rather than something quite heavy like it usually is.
Exactly. To me, like, the office of the presidency after this whole Trump thing barely stands for anything. And a guy like him, it's more so just looking at Ted Cruz, it's like, wow. For me, for better or worse, I can only really get into some people like this if I really dislike them.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that happening, I was like, wow, I actually hate this person. And so just started looking into him more so. Didn't make anything of it. Didn't make any podcasts, didn't make any videos, didn't troll him online. But, it was more just so, wow, I really dislike this person, and I wish I could do something to show this disdain I have for this person. And And so that, I guess, was just kind of the start of me following it, trying to find more people that I have a hate for.
And what? So that turned into the fake news podcast, or was that an earlier project?
That was just, I mean, that was like in 2013, more so just me like following politics as a whole.
Oh, okay, got you.
But yeah, I didn't start making anything like. I guess I can give kind of a backstory on when I did like the political stuff and everything, or more so just the creative work.
Yeah.
So like I'm from tech and everything, like I work in tech. That's my job that I work every single day. I've had startups, like one of which I sent you a little bit of information on, Learn.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like Duolingo for coding app. And I guess it was like December 2015 or so, like around there, early in the election, like the primary cycle. I wanted to like do something, and so I had found an article of Ted Cruz, that guy I was just talking about, that senator, and he was kind of the first personality that I really didn't like. And he was just starting to go out and, get on the primary trail and schmooze and shake hands and kiss babies and whatnot.
Yeah.
This article in the New York Times I found where he was going around and trying to appeal to, children, essentially, and make him seem like, oh, look, he's such a nice guy. He's just a normal guy like everyone else. And I took that article and I photoshopped it so that it read really bizarrely. Children were shouting at him. He was telling children that, the entire world is going to hell and that this place is going to, like, this world is a hellscape, and just to get ready for it, and just made it super surreal. And a couple of weeks before that, I had seen one of Vic's really, really early edits of Ted Cruz that he had made. And so I made this Photoshop of the New York Times article so that it looked like it was a real article, like you couldn't tell the difference if it was real or not. And I emailed it to Vic, and I was like, hey, man, I think you might think this is funny. Maybe. I don't know. And I also was like, I'm also from the same hometown as you, which is a weird coincidence. And he emailed me back and thought it was funny. And I was like, wow, okay, well, maybe this stuff is funny, at least to other people aside from myself.
And that was like your first step into satire.
Yeah, that was like the first thing into, putting stuff out there under my own name. I had done some anonymous stuff with a friend, but like, this was the first thing that I could put out there and I feel like do something about these people that I just really don't like, And yeah, so Vic thought it was funny, and then, I started making little Vine videos and sending them to him, and I got on Twitter and got more active on Twitter. And then eventually, that summer, because that was like December or so, that summer is when I found, the Neil Turner account, and I made that podcast, and that was definitely, the biggest thing and the biggest time commitment that I had put into doing any of this kind of satirical stuff. And, it just kind of went from there, from, doing little Vines and Photoshops to making Who is Neil to making fake news and everything.
Yeah, I didn't actually get all the way through Who is Neil. Like, I didn't actually find the, the story or the unveiling, or I don't know. Do you know any more than it is just like someone who isn't who they say they are?
Yeah, so I'll tell a weird story. And I'll give just a little synopsis about it again, just in case we want to, have more audio recording on this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, after I trolled him, and then after I made the bot that was a little bit faster than his and got the first reply to Donald Trump, made that podcast, got through, built a rapport with him, and he ended up getting banned from Twitter towards the end of the election, or maybe a little bit after the election ended, because Twitter got a lot more serious about cleaning up those alt-right accounts.
Right.
He was anonymous, and he started trolling Jack Dorsey as well with his bot.
Okay.
So he was flying pretty close to the sun.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, he got banned, and I was like, wow, weirdly, I was kind of sad because I literally put, I don't even know how many hours of my life into talking to this guy and talking to his friends and just, that whole thing. So it was kind of just like, wow, waking up and being like, holy shit, I put so much time into that, and like I have this weird connection to this guy I met on Twitter that like is just an anonymous person. But so months later, Vic actually was looking at a Cernovich video, and in the comments of this Cernovich video on YouTube, saw Neil commenting on it.
Oh, nice.
He had put his new Twitter account, like his new Twitter handle that he was using.
Uh-huh.
Vic messaged me and was like, hey, you know, look, this is Neil. Like, Neil is back. I think I found out who Neil is. And so I saw his new Twitter account. I messaged him right away because he had his DMs open, and we started talking again. And so in the podcast, he had lied to me essentially about who he actually was. And then when I found this new account, we started having, you know, a bigger conversation about who he was, and, you know, where he's from. And so it ends up, he is actually not even from the United States. He lives in Finland. And he is 22 and goes to university there.
Right.
So, yeah, that's who Neil Turner is.
What was he doing with that? Like, why was he doing that? Was it just like some social experiment like you?
I mean, you know, he said to me that he saw an opportunity. Like, to be clear, like, Neil was the one, as much as I disagree with all of their neo-Nazi-ish, you know, propaganda, the anti-Semitism, the racism, you know, he did come up with, like, a technical innovation that became, like, an enormous propaganda engine, is what it really is. And so, in a weird way, I respect that piece of it. And so, like, when he talked to me about it, he more saw it as, one, just trolling and fun, but also he saw an opportunity to have a massive impact and, like, get his, you know, views out there. So that's why he says he did it. I mean, partially just for trolling, but also because, you know, he saw an opportunity, and I guess he was an opportunist in a way. So yeah, that's why he says he did it. So I'd take him on his word for that, I suppose.
It's weird how strong the connections are between like the alt-right and the Republicans and like trolling.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's weird because like those people, they just need a target to go after, and I guess anyone doing press or entertainment or anything, you always try to target someone that's a little bit bigger than yourself, right? And so for them, I mean, Hillary Clinton was a pretty easy target for all these people, and Trump giving them the validation that what they're saying is truth. You know, that's how things like Pizzagate can pop up, how, you know, I'm not sure if you heard any of the spirit cooking.
No, I don't actually know about that. I did hear about Pizzagate, but what's that?
Oh, God. So, again, Cernovich, I fucking hate Cernovich for just to get that out there. Like, he's another person that I just look at and I just despise for so many reasons. So, Mike Cernovich, Alex Jones, a couple other people had come up with this theory that Hillary Clinton was part of a satanic cult, and they were doing sort of sacrifices and having these rituals where they would mix in blood and all these kind of like weird, you know, substances together and would make these brews, and it was like a real satanic cult that they were saying they were a part of. And that's like what they believed, and that's how they were getting traction, and that's how they were convincing people to vote for Hillary. So yeah, that was like part of the spirit cooking sort of stuff. But yeah, that was just another conspiracy thrown around that, you know, like a Pizzagate thing. It's obviously none of these people are pedophiles or anything, but it's the fact that even if you're not a pedophile, even if you're not in a satanic cult, if you have to denounce those things and you get someone saying, "Well, no, I'm not a pedophile. No, I'm not the leader of a child pedophile, you know, ring," then you're still talking about it. And like when you think about then, you know, one, I don't like Hillary Clinton at all, but you know, if someone like John Podesta now has to talk about, well, no, obviously I'm not a part of this child pedophile ring, then when you think about Hillary Clinton or you think about John Podesta, you're associating child pedophilia with that.
Yeah, like it subconsciously gives that ridiculous claim some kind of accidental validity.
Exactly. And it's like association. It's like now when you're thinking of Hillary Clinton, you're maybe not thinking of her policies, or you're not thinking of, why you would vote for her or why she's better than Donald Trump. You're solely thinking of, oh my God, yeah, she had to, talk about Pizzagate, and she had to
Right.
satanic cults, and that's like the initial association to a lot of people. It's brainwashing, it's propaganda. And these people are very, very good at what they do in terms of creating propaganda and convincing people of these absurdities.
I get the impression that Alex Jones, while he does have all of these insane theories and that, he is doing it primarily to instill fear in people to buy his shit.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely. I'm sure that's a part of it. And he slings a slew of different products, right?
They're all hilarious, and they all like have this. Why do they have this like? What is it about right wing and like survivalism? Why are they together? I don't get that association.
Well, I think part of it is just fear, right? Fear is just as powerful as hope, and in my eyes, a lot more powerful. So if you can scare the hell out of people to the point that they think that the nuclear holocaust is coming, or there's going to be a World War III, which who knows, maybe there will be at the rate we're going. But, as long as you can scare people to the point of believing that something like that is going to happen, or that you can't trust any of these people, they're poisoning your water, they're putting, listen, someone like a Hillary Clinton or, the Democrats are going to be poisoning your water, so you need this water filtration system. Believe me. Then,
yeah.
It's like it just turns into a mess. And so, that's how also someone like a Cernovich could say, listen, like, I'm awoken to what's really going on, and if you want to be awoken and see the truth also, you need to buy my nootropics, which are going to, you know what I mean? Like, are going to start firing off your neurons at a rate you wouldn't believe. People are full of fucking shit, and it's just like, it's all fear and stuff like that that gets people to the point of being able to, like buy nootropics or buy water filtration systems. So, yeah, it goes from fear tactics to get someone to vote for somebody, which is, what the politicians use, like fear-mongering, to fear-mongering to buy products. So, yeah, it's like a persuasion tactic, and a good one, right? Like, it works.
Yeah. Like, is that Cernovich's, like, entire business, just, like, books and untested medicine?
Yeah, Cernovich, Cernovich is definitely the one at this point that I've looked into the most.
Right.
I'm actually... right now working on, which I'll put out probably next week. I'll post it publicly. But I've been working on a mini documentary with some of Vic's videos and help from him and my friend about Cernovich's rape case and what really happened during it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm putting out a little mini doc, which is full video and everything. And we had dug up the real story, essentially, of what happened during that. So that'll be out next week. But yeah, like his whole thing and how he makes his money is, one, he had a wife. He's a lawyer and everything. He went to Pepperdine Law School, so he's not a dumb guy by any means. I think he probably has some mental issues, like he's mentally unstable. But like he was married to this woman who had worked for Facebook really early on. And like you write for like tech publications, some I had seen. Okay, so like how it goes when you're working at an early stage tech company like that, where you would take a very, very big pay cut to take equity in the company as well if you believe in it. And so Cernovich had helped his first wife get into Facebook really, really early on, and early enough that she took a big pay cut to take equity in the company, and seemingly a pretty decent equity split, which maybe was like, half a point or something, enough that you can make some real money. And so she stayed there all the way up to the point of the IPO. So she made 7 figures from the IPO, seemingly she made millions from it. And so her and Cernovich got divorced for who knows, it seems that at this point, he was getting super anti-feminist. She seemed to be a pretty staunch feminist. I don't know much about his first wife, but they had some disagreements around that, and eventually they got divorced. And through the alimony, as part of the divorce, Cernovich gets alimony, and he got a huge payout from his wife, 7-figure payout from his wife, because she had made all that money from Facebook. And so that's really what he lives off of, Like, he has the gorilla mindset. He pushes, whatever blue pills and nootropics and stuff that he sells. But that's where he, that's like his nest egg that he lives off of. And so, again, like, he makes some money off gorilla mindset. He makes some money off this other stuff, but that's really where he makes his money. Like, that's...
Yeah, he's just got a shitload of free time to sit around and conspiracy theorize. It just makes me wonder how much of that, like you say, he kind of got, he caused problems with his wife because she was so feminist, and he started kind of getting against it, like, kind of, not, he wasn't all like this his entire life. It makes me wonder whether he kind of figured out that he could use this as like a character, as like a selling mechanism, and like, emphasize it and start to like get people on his side and use that, like, play up a character for it instead of actually truly being like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I agree with that for sure. But I think also for him, like it is maybe an exaggerated form of himself that he does on his call-in shows and his periscopes and everything. But so, at least what I've seen from the trend is that he divorced his first wife and basically had all this money and, like you said, has all this time, and just started spiraling into a pretty deep, like, crash and burn, spiral for himself. And he, at that point, got very, very into steroids. That's when his rape case happened as well. So basically his life just went to shit. And, he went from being this kind of, pickup artist, steroid addict guy that was lifting weights all the time and trying to womanize and just kind of, shield his emotions from being an actual person.
Yeah.
That was all on the tail end of him getting the divorce. And so, yeah, that definitely triggered a lot of this kind of guerrilla mindset stuff, because he went from the rape case to the steroids to then being a self-help kind of guru guy, which was, all this misogyny and anti-feminism and men's rights bullshit. And, yeah, so that's kind of, like, all of that stuff, the rape case, which he says is false, and the divorce from his wife, who seemed like a real feminist, that definitely led to a lot of his personality today, it seems like. And, yeah, whether it's the kind of, I'm not sure if you've seen the Alex Jones court case.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that. What do you think about him, his lawyer calling him an actor, and he denied it, right? He said, only if you look at me dressed up in these costumes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have to look at, like, unbiasedly. Sure, I mean, he could be seen as a performance artist, and sure, like, Cernovich could be seen as a performance artist as well, and I could see them as they get into more of the kind of mainstream media, and unfortunately, they are becoming the mainstream media for the right, almost.
Yeah.
They're going to run into more of these issues where they can use that shield and kind of loophole to protect themselves in court. So the things they say, they could say, oh, well, it's satire, it's performance art, just like Stephen Colbert or Stewart or something. Maybe not Jon Stewart so much, but Stephen Colbert, I think, is a good example of, he was playing a character. He was playing a right-wing pundit. And so they could make the case that, yeah, I'm doing the exact same thing. So whether it lands or not, I think that we'll see that argument made a lot more in the future probably. But I don't believe that for a second, right? If you look back at the stuff that these people have done as people, like a Cernovich, where he's had rape cases, he's done tons of steroids, he seems mentally unstable. He's just spouting out stuff because these guys want to be famous and they want to be in the limelight. And the more ridiculous things that they say, the more followers they get. And even if people don't believe that, it's sensationalist and it gets people engaged. So I don't believe that any of it is performance art. I believe that they actually think these things are true to a certain extent, but they could exaggerate things to make a point. You know, they could come up with an insane conspiracy theory like Pizzagate to make the point that you can't trust Hillary Clinton, and just saying Hillary Clinton is untrustworthy. Yes, we all know that. Yes, we can all relate to that. But their way of taking that to the next step and making it dangerous is something like a Pizzagate.
I think it's a pretty tough argument for Alex Jones to make that he is playing a character, especially like even back in his college days, he was like mad into conspiracy theories, dropped out of college to run a public access TV show about Waco, was it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, the Waco stuff. I mean, yeah, the Waco stuff was just, it was bizarre. Like, you know, do you know about Waco and everything? I'm not sure.
Well, I did a bit of research about it. I was writing an article about Alex Jones recently. I haven't published it yet, but I wanted to do it after I've spoken to you as well a bit about it too. But I actually didn't fully grasp why Jones was so like fired up about Waco. Like, which one of his like few like triggers did it hit in him?
Yeah, it's like government. It's just government overstepping their bounds and dictating. It's like a free speech sort of thing almost, you know? So Waco, just a little bit about it, is like, you know, Waco was this guy, David Koresh, who was a far, far extreme, you know, Christian guy. I forget even the name at this point. Oh, Branch Davidians was the name of his kind of cult or sect. And so just like there's, you know, radical Islamic terrorism, which is extremists that take a religious point of view to the extreme, this was just a kind of United States version of that, right? You know, they were extremist Christians that believed that David Koresh was literally Jesus. You know, it was like a second coming of Jesus. He was a prophet, and that you had to listen to everything he said as truth, and that God was speaking to him. And so they had holed up in this place in Waco, in this compound, and, you know, they were, you know, apparently sexually abusing kids and, you know, almost like breeding people together. A lot of just disturbing stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where the government had to do something about it because they had firearms in their compound, and, you know, this was in Texas, and so they just weren't, you know, they weren't complying. They were becoming dangerous. Something could happen. Who knows? These people were totally blinded by what David Koresh was saying. So maybe tomorrow David Koresh says, you know, we need to go and cleanse this city of everyone that doesn't believe in what we believe because they're bad people. So when does it take the step towards violence, right?
Yeah.
And Alex Jones was like, all right, you know, these people are peaceful people. Let them live and let them do what they want to do. Let them, regardless of how extreme their beliefs are, they should be allowed to say anything they want and believe anything they want. That's free speech. And, you know, that's, again, something that a lot of the right will hide behind. And so eventually it got to the point where David Koresh isn't, you know, abiding by the laws, and the FBI is sent in and basically just, you know, bulldozes the entire compounds. And they believed, Alex Jones was basically saying that they kicked in the back door, they were open firing on kids and just mowing these people down, essentially. Like, the government exterminated them, is what he thinks. But really, it seems like there was a firefight, right? And, you know, Koresh got violent, the FBI had to retaliate, and, you know, I'm sure they're both at fault, right? And the FBI did kill literally almost like everyone that was in there, which is just horribly disturbing just in and of itself. But is that kind of government power and oversight of them just saying, well, yeah, we are the government, we're the FBI, and we'll decide if you're going to be allowed to survive and, you know, keep doing what you're doing. And so that's kind of the case that Alex Jones doesn't believe in. And so he comes up with all these crazy conspiracies to try to make that point that the government overstepped their bounds to take care of what he believes were peaceful people just expressing their, you know, or exercising their free speech rights. So
So he wasn't on their side, really. He was just against the government on it.
Yeah, basically, it was a case where, the government. It was easy to pin the government as doing something wrong because they did mow down, kids. So he says, but what the government says is they were shooting in and they hit the firearms and ammunition that were in the building and the compounds, and their own bullets, started firing off and killing the people inside. So. Who knows, man? I'm sure both sides were at fault for sure, and the outcome of all these people dying wasn't an ideal one for sure. But there was all the conspiracy spins and the idea that these people, the FBI showed up and David Koresh opens the door and says, "Howdy, how you doing?" And then they just open fire. It's like,
Yeah.
come on, that's probably not the case. So yeah, I don't know. It's that gray area that he takes advantage of, and when you don't know what's true or not, you can say anything, and that's where he takes it as just a conspiracy.
Do you think he's taking that same kind of just ride the wave of something and get popular off of it with Trump as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's what all these people are doing, right? Even Neil Turner, the guy that is on, that I did the Who Is Neil podcast about, he is, for these people, Trump is like an imperfect vessel almost. He is malleable and will say almost anything as long as it serves his agenda. So when Cernovich comes out and goes on 60 Minutes or says something about Susan Rice unmasking Trump's team to make the wiretapping claim seem valid, it's they just see him as a tool to ride to the top, and it's working, and it has worked, right? Alex Jones interviewed Trump early on in the primaries and has been a huge part of owning news cycles and pushing propaganda, anything from Hillary's health to Pizzagate to the spirit cooking stuff. So although Trump might not believe in all the same things that these guys believe in, Trump is still saying America first. He's a nationalist, and these guys are white nationalists. So, yeah, for anyone from a kid in Finland like Neil who hates Jews and hates diversity, to someone like Alex Jones who wants to build his media empire larger and build his audience, to someone like Cernovich who wants just to have his ridiculous views heard and basically just get famous. Trump is a vehicle for all of them to achieve their means.
Whether or not he's strictly in line with what they believe, he's the closest thing that they've got. You mean?
They all love Steve Bannon for sure. And if Bannon was punted from the White House, I am not sure that they would be as enthusiastic, but for sure, exactly what you said. He agrees with enough to be able for them to latch on to him.
I thought Steve Bannon was a really weird choice for such a high up position. It seems like he really is as radical as his supporters. Not Steve Bannon, but Trump appointing Steve Bannon into that position. Just it's kind of scary.
Oh, it's horrifying, and to me it's horrifying because of just the potential of state-run media and stuff like that. Steve Bannon was in Hollywood making propaganda documentaries, essentially. And before that, he was at Goldman Sachs, and just has some really dark views of the world, obviously. And so...
the fourth turning.
Yeah, the fourth turning. Exactly, the Neil Strauss stuff. Yeah, that... it's also just a part of me. I always, I get torn on this stuff before I talk a little bit more to Steve Bannon, just because when I look at that, it's some of these things and just overall the disdain for mainstream media and for the establishment on both sides, the right and the left. I don't like the establishment on the right. I don't like the establishment on the left. I don't like the mainstream media. So there's a weird part of me that when I see this stuff happening, I'm like, serves him right almost, Hillary Clinton sending, I'm not sure if you ever listened to Chapo Trap House before. It's his podcast from a couple of guys from Brooklyn. But they did this really great episode with Matt Taibbi where they were talking about, Hillary Clinton not going into those Rust Belt states, barely even stopping over there, and just kind of sending in a college student from Oberlin that, is doing their summer internship and is like, howdy, folks, like, yeah, are y'all voting for Hillary Clinton? And like going on knocking on doors and just having no idea what these blue collar people go through. They've been, these people are used to working in factories, having a union job, and now maybe their family hasn't had work for a couple of generations, and their cousin is an opioid addict, and you know what I mean? Like, they're going through hell, and they don't want someone to come and knock on their door like these establishment left people that just have no idea what's going on. So it's I hate to like even be on that same page, but I think people on the far, like the more leftist people and the people in the alt-right, I don't see it as just like a straight line and we're on opposite ends on the spectrum. It's more like a circle where, those two far extremes overlap with agreeing with some things, like the disdain for the mainstream media and for the establishment, but have harsh disagreements on things like immigration and ideas like the more social issues, of course. And going back to Steve Bannon, he's the face of that whole alt-right. He's running Breitbart, and so him being in a place of power like he is right now, to be able to push those real populist type of thoughts and really do thought policing, and just the idea that he can use Breitbart almost as state-run media is horrifying, right?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it like that, about how it becomes even less of a credible news source.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, to me, there's just no way that there's no cooperation between Breitbart and Bannon, that he's just basically, like how you have to put your assets in a blind trust if you're government official. There's no way that he's just kind of passed that off and doesn't have any influence there. When there's things that Trump does that are against Bannon's agenda, you'll see Breitbart putting out tons of articles that are slamming Trump, right? So it's just the bigger that Breitbart gets, the more power that these people get, and the longer that someone like Steve Bannon is involved at a high level of government, the scarier it gets for the idea of free press and, something like a Breitbart being almost like state-run media, just pushing propaganda.
Yeah. What is Steve Bannon's history, like he founded Breitbart like ages ago, or is this kind of another case of someone who's recently come into the forefront?
So he used to, I guess his background was, I don't know where he went to undergrad now, but he went to the Navy. He was like a naval engineer. So engineering sort of background, didn't ever, if you're an engineer, you don't have to go to the front lines. You're not actually fighting or anything, but you are in the Army. So he did that. He went and got his Harvard MBA. And after he got his MBA, he went and worked for Goldman Sachs for a bunch of years. So investment banking sort of stuff, looking at the world just through how many dollars you can make. After he made a bunch of money there, he started making a ton of documentaries that were promoting things like the Tea Party and far-right conservative politics, essentially. And, he was the chairman of Breitbart News. Like, he was the chairman of the parent company that owns Breitbart. But Andrew Breitbart was the one that was the CEO and chief editor and the voice of all of that. And so, Bannon wasn't the guy with the vision creating that, but him and Breitbart aligned, I'm sure, on a ton of different political views. And the weird thing is, if you listen to some of Steve Bannon's talks from 2012 during that election cycle, he's saying the stuff that ended up happening in 2016. He's talking about a populist movement. He's talking about disintermediation of media, where people like Cernovich, disintermediation being that these big media outlets that you just saw as truth and just had to, read from the days where everyone got their news from a TV channel and there's only 4 channels you could watch, or everyone opened up their New York Times paper every morning because it was put in their mailbox. those days are over, and individuals can be trusted just as much as these big media outlets. So someone like Cernovich can be trusted. Like, he doesn't need to work for a media outlet. You don't need to trust everyone in BuzzFeed just because they work for BuzzFeed. You can pick and choose individuals that you want to follow and believe. And so there's no more middleman, like the middleman being a New York Times to get to someone that you follow that writes there. Like, that no longer exists. And so he was spot on with everything from social media and how that's going to happen to people tossing away the establishment. So
yeah, I suppose that Mike Cernovich's popularity and people tossing away the establishment and refusing to get their news from sources that they would previously, or like everyone would have done, like you said, when there was only 4 channels. I guess that kind of goes really hand in hand with all of his ideology. Like, get it from an individual. Don't rely on what the man tells you and all that.
100%. Or just don't listen to, like, I keep using the New York Times as an example, but it's just don't listen to the New York Times because they're the New York Times. They are biased and they have their own views. It's an opinion, right? Like, it's a left-leaning outlet that has their own opinion. And so you have to know that's an opinion, just like you would listen to a person. And so he's just trying to say that, and I believe this to a certain extent, because in some ways, putting out a podcast like I have, people could listen to what I would say, or people could listen to, what a Cernovich would say and trust that, because people trust people. And, you can trust a brands, but I think the power of those big media outlets is slowly diminishing as, places like Facebook, Twitter, become more prominent in how we get our news. And just that there was a guy yesterday that I was talking to who we're building some stuff for, and he, no, 1 second, sorry. He was talking about how there's this underlying kind of like, what do you call it? It was like oligarchy or something.
Okay.
All these algorithms are feeding us exactly what we're going to see, and so and what we think. And so that's underlying everything. And that's a very, very scary thought, because we no longer even have the ability to pick and choose what we want to see. We're just fed stuff from Facebook. We're fed stuff from Twitter by algorithms that we talk about artificial intelligence being a scary thing when there's a robot that, we can't tell the difference between if it's a real person or a fake person, and it's, way past the Turing test, and it has the ability to be creative and has the ability to lie and manipulate. But what are these algorithms already doing? We're already there, like, in some ways, like we don't have the choice just to go out and make a totally objective decision on what we want to read and what we want to see. We're fed information based on our views on the internet, the clicks, the articles. Like, we don't have that freedom to peruse like we used to.
Yeah, I think it's something like, what is it, 60% of the I don't know, the world or Facebook users use Facebook as their main, or of America, I think it was, use Facebook as their main news source. So, like, when you've got the filter bubble, they're kind of controlling what people are going to be seeing, and not even being able to detect whether it's fake or not. And, it's going to get, like, stuff like that becomes viral because it has all this, like, sensationalist triggers in it that, it's just like marketing, really. It's, juice up the stories with some insane words and claims and that, and it starts to gain proof over the like social proof from virality and shares and views and that kind of thing, and it starts to create a new version of the truth. It's interesting what you were saying about how the algorithms are behind that.
Yeah, it's when you mix, I just feel like, at least from what I've seen, when you start to mix some of like the sensationalist propaganda with tech tools for distribution. I think the first reply kind of bot that we had built and that Neil had built is a great example of that, because you have a distribution mechanism which is just a really simple script, right? Like that bot to get the first reply to Donald Trump, that was not a complex thing to build. Like, you don't have to be an amazing engineer or anything to build that, but having that tool to be able not many people can leverage or use because you do have to have, a technical ability to build it. But you build something simple like that and you mix it with propaganda videos that are saying absurd claims or even something funny, right? That can spread around. Then you mix those together, and before you know it, in the case of myself, I was putting out videos from Vic Berger, videos from Todd Dracula, some of the stuff that I had made myself, even promoting the Who is Neil podcast with that first reply tool. You know what I mean? Like,
that's awesome, yeah.
250 million views. Like, when I eventually have become like desensitized to those kind of numbers, but that's a lot,
Yeah, that is insane. That seems like a really weird workaround, that it's strange that it hasn't kind of come to the forefront already.
Yeah, well, they changed. So why that happened was, and Neil used it for propaganda purposes, like we had talked about. And, like Twitter eventually changed to algorithm because how we were using it was on mobile. The algorithm was chronological. So it was literally just a speed test. Whoever wrote the fastest script could get the first reply.
Mm-hmm.
And we happened to write a really fast script. But again, it wasn't any sort of amazing technical innovation. It was a simple script. And so, they eventually changed it, I'm sure, because they saw this happening during the election for months. Myself, Neil, and these two other alt-right members of the alt-right that Neil had given the bot to were getting the first reply. And so they eventually, now it's changed so that, it's based on one, if you're verified, so only verified accounts are getting in the first replies, and it's more of a meritocracy. So if you get more likes and retweets on your stuff and you reply quickly to it, like speed matters, if you're verified or not matters, and how many likes and shares you get matters, and that's how you get the first reply now. But even now, I've been testing it. I got verified on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and so I've been testing the first reply just to see how it is, not using any tech or anything. And, I still put it out there and get in the top, 4 or 5 replies whenever I put stuff up, and that translates to still, I think, over the last week, I got 7.5 million views on it, just from putting out those first reply stuff. So it's just...
how is it using your personal account for that kind of thing? Do you not, wake up every morning to millions of hateful notifications?
Yeah, I've gotten used to it, though, because I used my personal account for the first reply stuff when I was, in that little bot war with Neil, and during the election, I used my personal account, and... I just attached a script essentially to my personal account and, was able to queue up content that would auto-reply every single time Donald Trump tweeted. So I was used to getting a lot of death threats and stuff, a lot of threats to, dox me and everything. And I don't know, I'm still here alive today. No one's come to my apartment and shot me.
You were saying about how that you got remote access or something on your laptop, and you went and ran to unplug the router.
Oh yeah, that was actually pretty scary. Yeah, because that was the first time that anything like that has ever happened to me. I had set up stuff like a VPN and everything just to protect myself, and so there was a point where it was middle of the election. I had been doing the first reply to Trump for maybe 2 months at this point, and someone tried to hack into my computer, for sure. They started moving stuff around. The screen started to break up, and I just ripped out all the cords, and then went up to my roof and just was kind of like, holy shit, Jesus, why am I even doing this?
Yeah, fuck. That must be a real, scary moment that makes you feel like you're getting into something that's much more deep and serious than it first seems.
Yeah, because there had been some threats, and it's funny because there had been threats from people on Twitter that some of them, it's weird because I work in tech and everything, and so there was people that were just your kind of standard mobile software engineer, for instance, that people look at that, and it always is weird to me that whenever anyone has those kind of tech skills, there's a large group of the population that sees these people almost as, oh my god, they were calling this guy a computer whisperer, he's some sort of messiah. that, you know, can do anything. It's like, listen, this guy is just he builds mobile apps basically. Like he's saying, he's throwing out all this technical jargon, threatening me and, you know, like trying to dox me and stuff. But like that stuff isn't scary because it's like, okay, dude, like I know what it takes. And I'm no amazing engineer or anything like that, but it's like I know the level of skill you have to actually like attack me and, you know, literally hack into my computer. And that's a totally different level of skill than just, you know, building products and putting out, you know, like tech products. So when I saw something like that happen where my computer was actually being kind of taken over, it was just like, wow, okay, well, someone saw this and someone is doing something about this, and that person must have a certain level of skill that is frightening. Just how I am as a person, you know, like I have a piece of paper over my camera. I usually stuff something in my audio jack outlets because I assume that if anyone wants to be seeing what I'm doing or what anyone is doing, whether it's the government or somebody else, they can do that. Like, it's not like they have access to pretty much everything. If you have the skills, you can do whatever you want. And all this stuff also, you think your computer is safe or anything like that. I mean, all this is made by people, right? Like, this computer is made by a person. Encryption is made by people. Any sort of app or anything, it's all made by people, and people are flawed and people make mistakes, and other people can find those loopholes because there always are loopholes. Nothing is perfect. Yeah, I don't know. There is like no such thing as privacy, really. So yeah, that was a little bit off topic, but that's how I feel about things and my paranoid mindset of it.
At least it's not like Alex Jones style.
Yeah, I think it's you know, again, like, you know, I hope that doesn't come across as like conspiratorial or like conspiracy theory, but I think it's just reality, right? Like, I think it's just the reality that we live in.
Yeah, people have those skills. It's like, it is scary, especially if you're, you know, doing something that could put you a target. Like, you're also selling the software that you wrote so that you can get the first reply in, right?
Yeah, we started selling that around. So during the election, you know, we started to get some inbounds from companies that were asking if we could sell them the tech. And this guy, again, like Todd Dracula on Twitter, we had given the app to him and we had given the app to Vic because we had made like an interface over the bot and everything so people could queue up their content and get the first reply and turn off the app when they wanted to, turn it on when they wanted to. So we had started giving it to kind of like individual content creators that just wanted to troll Trump, essentially, and, you know, spread their message. And then we started getting some more so media companies that contacted us that wanted to get their word out. And so we started selling it around some media companies. Eventually, some bigger companies got in touch that didn't necessarily want the Twitter bots, but wanted to know if we could build other kind of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and just bots in general for their companies. And that was kind of, you know, how we started Co-Studio, and we started doing this more as like a dev shop and as something we can make money from and make a living from.
Yeah, what an insane starting point.
I know, man. It was, you know, and it's been a good story when we like go out and talk to people about it, just because, I don't know, like, you know, we didn't make any money, obviously, from doing the first reply stuff for ourselves. My brother works with me on this stuff. He's a great software engineer, designer. And so, like, you know, he and I were working together on all this. And I don't know, we weren't making any money or anything off it. It was more just a civic duty sort of thing. If I was going to do anything during the election, you know, I wanted to do something around, I don't know, making content and getting it out to people, and I wanted to do something that I was interested in and that the people I really respect and look up to, like the Vics and the Todd Draculas and, you know, like the Tims of the world, like Tim Heideckers of the world, that would hopefully find interesting. So it started totally from a place of just, doing something for fun. And
what's next for content for you?
Well, I mean, the Cernovich mini doc is been the thing that I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. And I can do the video editing stuff, obviously not to the level of Vic or Todd or any of those guys, but I want to start making more of like video content. And so it's basically like a video podcast, the thing on the Cernovich rape case that's coming out. But like it has a couple of Vic's videos in it, for instance, that he made on Cernovich. It has one video that I made about Cernovich. It has interviews that I did with one of my friends that he had never heard about Cernovich's rape case before. He was in some of the podcasts with me. He was like in the Sean Spicer one. His name.
Yeah.
So like, we put ourselves on camera, just kind of doing what we do during the podcast, just kind of talking about, what's going on in these articles that we read or videos that we hear. So making it more video and more like a little documentary for it. That's kind of like the next step. Like I want to make more stuff like that. I want to make more video content, ideally. So yeah,
Wow, I'm really fucking excited for that Cernovich documentary.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it also, man. Like I put a lot of time into it. And, it's obviously not the best, like, video quality because we don't have cameras or anything. So I shot it in my apartment. I live in Brooklyn and everything. And, we put up just 2 different computers that we used as cameras at different angles that we could capture. And then, we just had 2 mics hooked up and everything. So that's how we did that piece of it. But then I think it's interesting because it's, I do blog readings as well from those blog posts that I found that were kind of describing what actually happened. So that kind of drives the story of it. And it's a dark story, dude. Like there was a point where as I was making it, I was talking to Vic a ton, because we'll go on and off of like talking and everything. And like, during this phase, Cernovich had just come to the public eye and I really hate Cernovich. He hates Cernovich. So I started making small videos about him and everything, and we were pushing them out. And Tim had shared some of them. And, we just found this case. And there was like almost a month now, maybe a little bit more, where every single night after work, I was just watching Cernovich videos, listening to Cernovich podcasts. And God, dude, honestly, I have to say, it just really messed with my head for a bit, like makes you not like healthy.
I know what you mean. When I was writing up this article on Alex Jones, and first of all, I decided that it was going to be about all of them, and the amount of content surrounding them, it's just insane, and it's so long, and it almost feels like it's starting to get to you.
It does, dude. And then, here's something that I think about all this stuff, and I've been pretty open about like my personal feelings of why I do this, of just like out of a place of being almost vindictive and kind of like hating these people. And hate is a very, very strong word. So when I say that, I really actually hate these people, and I'm not, inherently an angry, hateful person or anything, but these people just bring something out in me that's just like, God, fuck these people. And when you watch so much of this and you think so much about it, and at least for me, I'm doing it out of a place of kind of being vindictive and hateful, it just makes you question, like, what does that mean about you as a person? Like, what does that mean about me that I get enjoyment out of doing this? And it makes me think, like, am I really any better than these people,
That is a dark thought.
And those are the thoughts that start popping up. And as you watch more even of a person like Cernovich, I'm sure he does stuff out of a place of insecurities, and everyone has insecurities. So I don't know. It's just, it makes your head spin. And it's hard to watch so much of this guy because it's disturbing, right? Like some of this stuff is just disturbing. Like this rape case, it's a rape case, it's disturbing stuff, and ways that he got out of the rape case, and the story behind it is just gruesome. And yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's like a smear piece basically. But also I think an important story right now because of all the sexual harassment allegations that are coming out, and just showing that the court system, you look at these loopholes and you look at the flaws in it and how these people with power and money can exploit them. And you see the other side of that, yes, like the justice system, it's broken, obviously. But when you're in a situation like that, I would assume you would be grateful for those loopholes if it could help you, right? Like I would be happy to exploit a loophole if I was put into a corner and it could ruin my life, right? I think anyone would. So, yeah, it just makes you think about yourself a lot. At least it has for me. Of like, who the hell am I? Like, why? It's almost just as dark in some ways. So yeah.
Was that through the course of making the documentary that you kind of fell deeper into it and sort of started kind of feeling that it was a scary territory?
Well, when I did Who is Neil, I mean, Cernovich, he's a disturbed guy. He's a sick person. But, honestly, when I started doing the Neil stuff, the Who is Neil podcast, that was someone that was more, like, his views were a lot more extreme, right? Like, he was a legitimate neo-Nazi, essentially. And the people, his two friends, one was this guy, Jason Bergkamp, who was, again, like a Nazi kind of guy, and this other guy, White Genocide T1, who had talked to me a ton and was actually like literally brought up in FBI briefings and like court cases. Yeah, it's intense, and they just got comfortable with me and started talking to me and told me a lot of stuff just about what they believe and everything. So that sort of stuff was highly disturbing, and at that point in time, with the Cernovich stuff, it's at this point in my life, I have work that takes up a ton of time and everything. Like during the days, my mind isn't so focused on that. But when I was doing the Who is Neil, I was just pretty much fully immersed in it because my days were making content and updating the tech so that we could continue to get wide distribution on all the content, and was just on Twitter a ton, was in tech and code a ton, just kind of abstracted from the world. And so during those times, I think were kind of the darkest and the harrowing because of their beliefs, but also because that's like what I was doing solely. And so now, I mean, over the last month or so, as I've made the Cernovich documentary, I mean, a lot of that stuff is just really depressing, frankly, to me, like disturbing of him as a person. But, it gets to me for sure. But I don't know if to the same extent that the kind of Who is Neil stuff did, at least initially, because that was just kind of the first entrance into it and seeing these people. And so now where I'm at, I feel like I have a much better understanding of that stuff. But when you spend so much time doing it, and when I start getting those phases where I work during the day and then work basically like two jobs where I'm doing the tech stuff during the day and doing the content at night, that's when it just starts messing with my head, when I'm doing it really, really consistently over a long period of time, which I've started to do with the podcast. Not so much wasn't messing with me because I have, friends and everything that I do that with, and that can turn into a fun thing and a way to kind of be cathartic and be like, God, we all hate these people. But when I'm doing like the tons of research and everything, like I did for the documentary, that stuff just makes my head spin sometimes, and gets me in a very dark place. So I'm in some ways happy to be like towards the end of making it just for my own.
Yeah. So that's next week, right?
Should be next week. Yeah, I hope so. I sent it around, like, I had an initial version of it. It's like 21 minutes. It's like a little episode, essentially. And so I had sent that around to some of my friends, like the people that had done the Vice piece and stuff. I sent stuff to get feedback. And then some friends I'd sent it to, and some press people I'd sent it to, just to kind of see what they think. And so making some edits based on that this weekend, now that I'll have some time. And then I'll probably start reaching out to press and everything again this next week in hopes that I can get like one person to cover it and everything. And then, I'll send it to Vic and send it to all these people just on Twitter in hopes that they'll share it and pass it around.
I'll be sure to cover it and in whatever limited capacity I can.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. I think you'll like it. It sounds like, and I think you'll be able to relate to just that kind of mental state and everything from doing your Alex Jones piece, and just seeing the human and dark side of these people.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and thanks so much for giving me an hour out of your day after saying how busy you've been and everything.
No worries. I was frustrated to have to push it back on you the last time. But yeah, the tech work has just been super heavy. We've just really ramped up here, taking on the client work and everything, and we're actually about to potentially work with the education department for the U.S. to build some really cool tools for a bunch of cities around the United States to track the data and accountability for teachers across the United States. So,
well, that's insane.
Yeah, that's why I had to push you back the last time.
Yeah. Fair enough, I think.
They were just like, yeah, we need to meet today. And I was like, well, I have to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're starting to get some really cool big projects, and the press from the Vice thing and everything, they're two very, very separate parts of my life. I've always kept them really separate, doing content stuff, which is for fun, and then doing the tech stuff, which, is how I make my money and everything. So, yeah, it's there's been times when they've been able to overlap, during the election, but typically I try to keep them kind of separate. But yeah, that's my life.
It's been so good to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking your time.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Thanks so much for doing it.
What an incredibly interesting and friendly guy Nathan is. Again, I'm so thankful, just like everybody who appears, for him to come on this show. But I'm in particular thankful when they take the time to have such a engaging and deep conversation with us. And I'm particularly glad that Benjamin managed to get that out of Nathan, because I've got to be honest, Benjamin, I doubted you had it in you, but you did a good job. Well done, son. We've got more guests coming up, all from all kinds of different places, really, and I'm looking forward to them all. And I'd love to name names, but I know I'm going to be putting my foot in it. I'm probably going to name names and then I'll cancel. But I feel like if I don't name names, they won't cancel. So we've got some incredibly exciting people coming up. So please stay tuned. And we will eventually be going back to our usual way of doing podcasts, which is just me and the two Bens shooting shit around various subjects. But we've just been so busy doing these interviews, which, are exciting and fun. And, frankly, I'm really enjoying doing them. So I hope that you're enjoying listening to them. And see you next week when we should have another guest. Thank you very much, and bye for now.